Dr. Murray Banks.
Thank you very much for that very warm and enthusiastic welcome. It's certainly a thrilling thing to see such a packed house. I'm reminded at once of my experience in Minnesota some years ago when I was invited to speak to an audience of 20,000 people. And the day I arrived to give my talk, the biggest blizzard that the state of Minnesota had ever experienced struck. I dug my way through the snow to the auditorium. There in that vast auditorium, 20,000 seats, sat one man. I said, "Mister, if you can take your life in your hands to come through this storm tonight just to hear me speak, I'm going to give my entire talk from beginning to end just for you, because this shows that you are a man of culture." He said, "Culture, schmulture, I'm the janitor. Finish up and let's go home." Now, ladies and gentlemen, whether you get married or stay single, whether you have one child or three, buy a Ford or a DeSoto, a blue dress or a red, whatever you do shows something about you. And the psychologist is the person who tries to figure out, what does what you do mean? Now, that isn't as simple as you may think. Sometimes gets pretty complicated. Just to show you how complicated, may I tell you about two bookkeepers who worked in a small insurance office? One day the boss came out. He said, "Gentlemen, I'm going to the ball game. Goodbye." One bookkeeper looked at the other one. Says, "You see that? You see? The boss. He wants to go to the ball game. He wants to go home. He gets up. He goes. I wish I could go home." The other one says, "You want to go home? Go home." He says, "How can I go home? I'll get caught." He says, "How are you going to get caught? The boss is gone. We're the only ones here. I won't tell him. Go home. You won't get caught." It's a good idea. Took his hat, went home. Opened the door to his apartment, and what do you think? Well, I see that you guessed it. Sitting there making passionate love to his wife, the boss. Well, he rushed right back to the office, threw his hat on the desk, said, "My God, I almost got caught." You see, it can get a little complicated, can't it? Of course, the psychologist knows that no matter how complicated your reasons are, for whatever you may do, he knows that whatever you do because in the end, you expect a little more happiness as a result, or you wouldn't do it. Of course, when you get to happiness, you run into a lot of trouble. I could take 6 of you sitting here right now and say, "Would you stand up, please, and tell me what you believe is the most important single ingredient in a happy person?" You'd get 6 different answers. One person would say, "The most important? Health. You have health, you have everything." Another one says, "No, money. Another one says, "Love. Oh, I wish I could find the Schmendrick of my own." Another one says, "Fame, fortune." You get all different answers, none of which are the right answer. Because if it just took health to make you happy, then every person who could pass a physical would automatically be happy. You passed the physical? Ooh, are you happy? Now, if it just took money to make for happiness, then every millionaire would automatically be happy. If you think it takes fame, fortune, youth, beauty, talent to make for happiness, then riddle me this. Why did Judy Garland attempt suicide? Why did Ham Fisher, the creator of Joe Palooka, lock himself in his apartment and put a bullet through his head? By the way, Ham Fisher left an estate of $2.5 million. There's another name, Mr. Robert Young, chairman of the New York Central Railroad in New York, who locked himself in his plush mansion in Palm Beach and ended his life. He left an estate of $8.5 million. Now, here are people who surely have all these things, yet with them all, they still choose to die. Because, ladies and gentlemen, with them all, they still lack the most precious one of all, a contented heart, an untroubled heart. that lets you enjoy what you've got. What good is it if you own a beautiful home, have 2 cars, 6 bank accounts, and still you must eat rice and milk because of your ulcers? You would be amazed if you knew how many people think that they can find happiness through someone else. I married you, didn't I? Make me happy. Go ahead, make me happy. You know about the couple who were married 30 years? 30 years, of which only the first 5 years were gloriously happy. He was in the army. Have you ever had this experience? Have you ever had a friend of yours come up to you and say, "Oh, I'll tell you the truth, I'm really miserable. I wish I knew where I could go to find a little happiness." Where is it? Where do you go for it? You know where? Paris, N.Y.C, California. You notice happiness is always someplace where you're not. California, Florida, Lost Wages, Nevada. It's always someplace where you're not. When I was a little boy, I stood in Woolworth's one day and I watched with fascination a little chipmunk running on a wheel. The chipmunk would run and run and run. Yet no matter how much he ran, he always stood in exactly the same spot. When will human beings learn it? If happiness is ever to be found, it must be found in one single place, inside yourself. I heard a woman say, "Where'er I go, I must take myself along." And that spoils everything. I met a woman in Miami. She said to me, "I came here to forget. I must forget. I've come to forget. I've got to forget." I said, "What you come to forget?" She said, "I forgot." Now, I know that most of you here this evening have surely had enough experience by now to recognize the obvious symptoms of sickness or health in another person. I just wonder how many of you here tonight can recognize through symptoms a happy person. How do you know when you meet a happy person? What are the symptoms? In case you don't know what they are, I am going to tell you right now. Now listen very carefully, because you might find out that you've been happy all these years and didn't know it. Wouldn't that be awful? Let's get clear on one thing. The psychologist does not like the word happy. It's the most deceptive word in the English language. When you say happy to most people, what do they think of? They think of being hilarious. Now, when I say a happy person, I don't mean someone who gets up in the morning and says, "Ooh, am I happy?" I don't think you're happy if you act like that. I think you're crazy. A happy person, ladies and gentlemen, is one who has problems, disappointments, frustrations, but who knows how to meet and adjust to them intelligently. And there is the great, great secret of all psychiatry. Not the problems, never the problems. Now listen, there isn't one couple sitting here tonight whose life problems will be more heartbreaking than the couple sitting behind you, in front of you, or next to you. It is your adjustment to the problem that will make you what you are. And so the psychologist prefers the word well-adjusted. It means you can meet equally your sorrows as well as your joys. I never talk about adjustment, but I don't think of one little Jewish lady who walked into a department store in Brooklyn. She walked over to the floor walker. She says, "Mister, where can I find, please, Johnson's baby powder?" Just by coincidence, he was extremely bow-legged. He said, "Madam, walk this way to count to 3 and you'll find it." He says, "Mister, if I could walk that way, I wouldn't need the Johnson's baby powder." Now that's what I call adjustment, see?